All right. Welcome, everyone. This is the kickoff for the chat with your Codebase sub-team, the APAC version. So thanks for joining. Yeah, I wanted to start talking a little bit about just sub-teams in general because it's a new topic. I went into it a little more detail earlier today, so you could watch the recording if you haven't, but basically sub-teams are a new way we're trying to organize at GitLab, especially, well, we're piloting it with some AI features. This is one of two brand new sub-teams that are starting, and it's meant as a kind of a cross-functional, cross-group team that gets together to focus on one project. There's one engineering manager, one product manager, but engineers from multiple teams all working together. We found that for a lot of these AI features, it spans a lot of teams anyway. So we're kind of piloting this project or this process around sub teams. There are some unknowns still, and so I think because we're one of the two sub teams that are trying this out, there'll be some learnings and some things that we're going to have to figure out along the way. The other one is Duo, like agentic chat with Duo work, or Duo chat and Duo workflow, kind of combining those. That's the other sub team that's going on right now. And they are kicking off at the same time we are. So we'll learn from each other, but yeah, I think this morning, or morning for me, yesterday for you too, it was the meeting. There were some questions around, which I don't know the answers to yet, but I'll just preemptively let you know that. The first one was around exit criteria. And when do we know the subteam is done? I don't have a great answer for that, other than we should define that and work towards a common goal. They're meant to be short-lived, a couple months probably. So we should define what that looks like as a group of what that exit criteria is when this group will disband. And then code creation is going to be the driving team, which is kind of the term we're throwing around when we talk about sub-teams for who owns this once the sub-team goes away, because it spans multiple teams or multiple groups. For this one, it's code creation, editor extensions, and global search. When those people go back, or when we all go back to our regular teams, we want to make sure somebody continues to own this and drive it forward. So that will be code creation in this case. So that was one. And then the other question was around like how much time do we dedicate to this versus other projects your group might be working on. That I have to find out, especially for editor extensions and global search. It's a little easier with code creation because I know what everyone's working on, and I can. So I think this will be. I know Pam, you're wrapping up a few things, but once that, then this will be the primary focus for the code creation members of this group. Do you have any questions just about sub teams that I could try to answer? All right. So then, yeah, I can talk a little bit about who's on the team. In addition to you two, it'll be Tian from code creation. And then from editor extensions, it will be Anna and John. And then from global search, and I have the list lower in the agenda if you want to see everyone's name. And then from global search, it'll be Maddie. That'll be great. They all bring different areas of expertise, which we will need for this project. Product manager will be Jordan, who's the product manager for code creation. He's on PTO this week, but he'll be back next week to jump in, and then I'll be the engineering manager. Good. Okay. So then I wanted to talk a little bit about the specific project. Does anyone have questions before I jump into that? Pam? I know, James, you probably haven't had a chance to look at this much. I just kind of threw it on you. So, that's fair. But yeah, so chat, the goal of the chat with your Codebase project is really, we want a better way to interact with the Codebase so we can answer questions. And there's some listed in the Epic. Things like, what are some of the most common functions that are used, or what are the common imports? Where is this method defined? So things like that, which we can kind of answer some of those questions today, but not really well. Most of them we can't. So we want to build a system that helps us answer those questions, or helps our users answer those kinds of questions. I see it as kind of the first customer-facing thing that's part of our larger knowledge graph project. I see those two working together. So this chat with your code base, the current idea is that we'll use embeddings and search. Built on top of the global search team has built an abstraction layer specifically for embeddings. So we'll use that, and then we'll be able to interact and ask those kind of code-related questions from chat within the IDE. The other side of this that other people are working on in the code creation team is the knowledge graph, which is going to store data not as embeddings, but in a graph database. So we're going to store nodes and edges and be able to traverse through your code base. And that provides kind of a different set of functionality that embeddings can't quite answer either. So, and for both of these things, I can see it working. We can use it for chat. We can use it probably for code suggestions, but then expand to a lot of other use cases once we have the basics working. It could be Duo Chat, Duo Workflow could use this. But even just kind of browsing your source code on GitLab.com or through the browser, maybe if we know about embeddings, we'll be able to jump around to related files much easier, things like that, which is, I guess because we're using embeddings, it's kind of an AI tool, but it's not. It's not really. So at a high level, does that kind of make sense of kind of what we're trying? Okay, good. I think there's going to be some kind of areas of expertise between the different people involved in this project. From the code creation side, since you're both here, I think our responsibility is going to be really understanding how to kind of parse the repository and create the embeddings. Now, Maddie from the Global Search has a lot of experience in that, so like we can definitely leverage that expertise. But we're going to be kind of the ones that figure out how to, like, what size of a chunk of code do we parse and convert to an embedding? How do we potentially use Tree Sitter for some of this? We'll also be the ones responsible for evaluations and pipelines. So using like the ELI5 tool potentially, or likely. So that's kind of where I see us kind of fitting in, at least at the beginning, is how do we break the code apart and build the code parser that segments it, and then how do we either we actually write the code that creates the embeddings, or we work with the global search team to do that. I don't remember exactly where the boundary is for that. or what tools they've already built to rebuild anything if they've already done some of that, which I think they have. Then from the global search side, it will be that abstraction layer and the embeddings and storing them and retrieving them. I think they already have APIs for that. So we'll be using whatever they have. And just figuring out kind of how do we take the code and the embedding and what metadata needs to be stored, kind of what that structure is. How do we actually store that information to make it easy to search? And then editor extensions will be kind of in charge of the front end and the UI, updating the extensions, which will be not Neovim, but the other 4 that we support. So VS Code, JetBrains, Visual Studio, and Eclipse. Making sure we can interact with this from within there. There's already some designs for that. I think they're in that epic. So I think that's kind of how it's going to break down. That's how I'm picturing it, at least. That said, I don't want to like pigeonhole people into certain areas. So you can certainly expand beyond that, however makes the most sense for this team. Okay, so then just some kind of logistical things and next steps. So when you look at that epic, Jordan did a great job of filling in lots of great information in there. So that's really good. I then just added at the bottom a kind of proposed implementation plan, but that's the first step is need to verify that this makes sense, and hopefully do that kind of in this week or in the next couple of days, and then turn that into actual issues that we can start working on. Because right now there's an epic, but there's nothing besides that to actually do the work. So we need what I put or whatever we decide on as the implementation plan. We need that in maybe either sub epics or issues, but they need to be better defined than what I had now. I just kind of had the first kind of high level version of that. So that's kind of the immediate next step. We'll also, we're talking about, we might have more of a kind of a technical focused meeting. So we'll see if we can find a good time for that this week, to kind of dig in there a little bit. And yeah, earlier today we asked if we were wanting to do a kind of a technical architecture blueprint. We can decide as a group what makes sense. I think what I said this morning too, it makes sense to have a high level design. I don't know that it needs to be as formal as a full architecture blueprint, but I think it would be a good thing early on. So in the next week or so to at least come up with a kind of a high level design of where we're going, and a design from a architecture standpoint, not a front end UI design. That kind of design, and have that just so we kind of know how the pieces will fit together and what we're building towards. Okay. Any questions about any of that? No. Yeah. Yeah.
Hold on. I'm just writing all my questions down.
Great.
I actually think that we should have the blueprint for this, because it sounds to me like like it's not a trivial project. We don't have to have all the information, like we don't have to have the blueprint and then write all the information at once. We can build on it slowly, but I think we should have it So it's going to be
Okay.
useful for us going forward. Like once this is done, the blueprint becomes like an active document that people can look at and say, hey, why is this designed this way?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was thinking we could streamline a little bit, but you're right for the maintainability of it.
Yeah, no,
That is
I
probably
mean,
the
like,
correct thing to do. Yeah.
in terms of streamlining, like we don't have to write everything at once.
Yeah. That's fair.
Um, and then I think like, so I was looking at the AI abstraction layer. The I think this is the blueprint or at least the architecture design document for the AI abstraction layer. And part of the initial features listed here is the code embeddings. So there's documentation embeddings, code embeddings, issue embeddings, and other embeddings. So I'm assuming this is the code embeddings part of this intersects with the code embeddings that global search is planning to do. So essentially, this is what it is. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, that's how I understand it. Yeah. So the global search team built that AI abstraction layer. Um, yeah. The thing I don't know, but I'm certain Maddie knows, is how do we take a chunk of code and get it turned into an embedding in this data store? It's an abstraction layer. And the reason I should back up, just the reason we designed it with an abstraction layer is because customers could have different data stores underneath there. The main ones are going to be Elastic or PG Vector. They if a customer has Elastic, that probably is a more powerful search experience for embeddings. But not all of our customers do. So that's why it was built that way. So us from this side, we just have to know what I assume is an API that we can kind of send this to, and it'll store the embedding for us, and then we can just read it out. And it doesn't matter to us how it's stored.
Okay. All right, I'm just writing it down. So these
Yeah,
two
thank you.
per sec, and then yeah, yes. So they're basically the same thing, right?
Yes, yeah.
Um, and then yeah, my other question is I was reviewing I think that was John's post on the Epic, and he proposed talking something about like this should be part of, I guess, like the duo chat feature. So my question is, should we be getting someone from duo chat in this? I'm honestly like I have no idea what the team structure anymore in with duo chat, AI framework, and custom model. So I'm not sure.
Um, yeah, so um, we had talked about that, and I can't remember exactly right now, but I can find it. We had a reason why we thought we didn't need that for this, at least right off the bat. I had talked to Jordan and Torsten a couple weeks ago about this. I think I'll have to go back and look at my notes, but from what I remember, so we're thinking of this as probably just a new tool that we build on top of Duo Chat. So since we would own that and we would build it, we didn't think that we would need much help from Duo Chat at least from how we're thinking about it right now. That said, it definitely could change. And we can always, ask them if we have questions. They're still available in that capacity. And if we really, once we get into it a little bit, if we realize we need more help, we can talk about pulling someone from that team in.
Okay,
That's a
that's
That is a good question. Yeah.
That makes sense. I have one last question. So this is more technical, and I guess we can answer this during the technical kickoff. Is that like, should we have a first step of having like a POC evaluation or POC to prove that like given this question and given this repository, this indexed repository, or like these embeddings, um then we are getting like the right answers for this, because it's basically we don't need a UX for now.
Yeah.
um I just, I think with the knowledge graph work, there's also, there was some embeddings done there, like just as part of the, initially when we still hadn't this, when we hadn't yet
Yeah.
discussed knowledge graph is going to be different from vector embeddings. The initial POC has both knowledge graph and vector embeddings, so
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we could make use of that.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. So just for some history for you, James, and for the YouTube world. Yeah, so the initial POC for the knowledge graph had, yes, like Pam said, the embeddings and kind of a vector or like a graph data store. And we combined those depending on to kind of try to find the right answer. We already did some of, I feel like we already did a little bit of evaluation on kind of what types of questions it can answer and kind of showed that. But um, I think it would be worthwhile to revisit that and just make sure that because I think it's already there, so we just have to find the information. Or we could work with like Jan and Vitaly on the code creation team. Um, just to make sure that like kind of at a high level, like will embeddings in general answer these types of questions? I think I think we did some of that already, like you said, especially early on. But I think it would be worth
Yeah,
looking at.
yeah, I think so. Like even if we might not need to do the POC again, because maybe that's enough, and but we just need to like formalize it that this was
Yeah,
done and this is the proof that it's possible.
yeah, definitely. I think that's a good point. Okay, thank you for thinking through all this and all these questions. This is great. The other topic that's new and we need to figure out is around this kind of new idea of MCP. And I forgot what MCP, Model Context Protocol, I think is what it stands for. Yeah. That it's a hot topic right now, kind of at GitLab, but also across the industry. And it's new, like in the last, I don't know, I just started hearing about it maybe last week or the week before. But basically, the idea would be that we could provide, well, basically that the LLM would be the one that kind of figures out what information it needs. There's kind of some round trips where um, it does this context gathering phase for us. Um, I think so. That's about the extent of my knowledge of it so far. Um, uh, Claude Code, if you want to try it out, I think we all have access to that. Is That's what it is doing. But the LLM then, and John explained it early in the previous call. So I'll let you watch it because he can explain it better than I can. Um, but I think there's a place. My plan right now is to start as we intended with embeddings and yeah, kind of this chat with your code base with semantic search and embeddings, doing that. And then as we learn more about MCP, we can see if there's a place for that. I kind of think of them as kind of tools that can live together, and we can just figure out which use cases make sense for them. I think my understanding is that MCP approach potentially would be a little bit slower because you're kind of building this context in real time. But you don't have the upfront cost of having to create embeddings. And so there's trade-offs either way. But I think there's going to be a space for both of those things. So what I recommended this morning, or my morning, was we continue with the plan, kind of working through this chat with your Codebase epic. And then once we kind of figure out the first phase and get into it a little bit, then we'll probably know more about MCP, and then we can kind of understand kind of how it overlaps and how it can work together. Okay, so we're almost out of time. So the next steps are really to kind of review the epic. Oh yeah, go ahead, Pam.
It just occurred to me. So in the epic, Jordan talked about standard search as well. So are we considering that in scope of this project? So there's some mention here about standard, like hybrid
there's
search.
like a hybrid search, yeah. Yes. Yeah, so that would be combining the embedding-based semantic search with some of the other search technologies that the global search team has already built. So the goal is that we would support both. But I think, yeah, I don't know exactly how that will work, though it's something we'll definitely have to figure out. I think my thought was that we would start, the first phase is going to be around building embeddings and how do we access those and search those. And then we'll figure out how to bring in kind of other search technologies, or making sure we're using them the best way. That said, be thinking about how if we're making design decisions, it probably makes sense to keep that in mind. Okay. So then, yeah, just to wrap up, yeah, take a look at the epic, especially the implementation plan, especially the beginning of the implementation plan. See if that makes sense. If there's other approaches, I'm totally open to that. This was a path forward, doesn't mean it's the only one. So if there's something that makes more sense from a technical perspective, please let me know. And then hopefully in the next couple days, we can turn this implementation plan that's just text now into actual issues that we can start flushing out and refining and starting to work on. All right. Any other questions right now? All right. I did create a Geekbop stand-up as well. So James, I didn't add you in there, but Pam, you'll probably get a ping shortly here that we'll start asking you about that. But yeah, I thought it was, or we thought it might be good to keep up that asynchronous communication, especially since we're across time zones. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, as you dig in, let me know if you have questions. I'll try to answer them from the product standpoint as well, since Jordan's out for a few more days. So yeah, let me know any questions you have, and I'll try to get the answers. Yeah, hopefully we can move forward. But yeah, looking forward to it. All right. Thanks for joining, Jay. Thanks, Pam, for all the collaboration. Appreciate it. And yeah, we'll talk to you all soon.